This morning's reading is taken from the book of Romans, chapter 8, verses 18 to 25. Listen now to the word of the Lord. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in the hope that creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we are saved. But hope is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have? For if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Well, it's lovely to be with you this morning. Thank you for having me. I am very sorry to hear about the news of your dear friend Pam. Just wanted to say that. As Ollie said, I'm Helen Stephens, and I worshipped at All Souls in St Margaret's for many years. I'm now at St Mary's in Hampton, where I have lived with my husband and son for the last 15 years or so. And I know Rachel of old. She's my oldest London friend. I work for A Rocha UK as the Church Relations Manager and have responsibility for something called the Eco Church Programme, which was mentioned briefly on the slides. And it is all about engaging churches to care for creation. Excuse me. So I've been asked to speak to you this morning about creation care and climate change in the context of the news. I read or listen to the news most days. Have to admit, I'm a Radio 4 lover. I put the radio onto Channel 4. My husband puts it onto Radio 5, and that's what goes on throughout the day. I feel compelled to listen to the news, even though some of it is painful and heart-wrenching. But I want to know what's happening, not just in my street or my town or even in the UK, but in the wider world, because I don't live in isolation from it, and my choices and actions have implications for others. Never more so has this been true than in our globalised, media-saturated, interconnected world. But more than this, as a Christian, I believe in the words of Psalm 24, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, and I want to know it through his eyes." I've mostly lived my life through a green lens. I don't remember a time when I didn't love nature. David Attenborough, who turned 98 last week, was once asked by an interviewer when he discovered his love of the natural world, to which he responded, "Well, when did you lose yours?" The point he was making is that we're all born with an inherent attraction or love of the natural world. Just observe the curiosity of children encountering bugs or beetles for the first time. We're intimately connected to the rest of creation. And while I've always felt or sensed this, and I've been a Christian for all of my adult life, it's really only in the last decade or so that I have started to look at that through a deeper biblical lens. If I could have the next slide, please. Sorry, thank you. I see what I have experienced of creation in my 50 years or so on this planet reflected in the Bible on so many levels. As a Christian, I believe God created the whole world and everything in it and declared it very good. Creation was, from the beginning, an act of love. And there is so much beauty still. I heard Simon Reeve speak last Monday, a man who has travelled to the ends of the earth, and that was the title of his talk. And he very clearly said that amidst all the suffering and the brokenness, there is still beauty to be found. And I see and experience, as in the Romans passage that was read to us, that the whole creation is groaning, as in the pains of childbirth. And that's pretty painful. This leads me to two questions that I want to try and answer over the next 12 to 15 minutes or so that we've got left. How are we connected to God and creation? And who are we? What role do we have in creation? So firstly, connected to it. The Psalms and the words from Psalm 65 shared on the screen highlight that the connection between God and humanity can be measured by the natural world. Flowing water and a full harvest are signs of God's bountiful provision for us and for the rest of creation, that we're living in harmony with God and creation. The Psalms are full of wonderful imagery of an earth that is alive and teeming with life, and of God in relationship with it, of which we, humanity, are just a part, though also unique in creation, being made in the image of God and called to reflect his image to the rest of creation by looking after it. In Genesis 2, verse 15, humans were placed in the Garden of Eden and instructed to work it and take care of it. In other words, God has given us the responsibility to act as stewards of his creation, to care for, manage, oversee, and protect all that God loves. As we care for the earth, so it cares for us. It's why there's a fifth mark of mission in the Anglican Church, to strive to safeguard the integrity of creation and sustain and renew the life of the earth. But this fifth mark is so interconnected to the other four marks of mission, like responding to human needs by loving service. When we realise our interconnectedness and dependence, how can we not care for creation? So what's in the news and why does it matter? Mindful of the audience today, I'm not going to read headlines in full, but here's a flavour of some of the news just in the last week. The stakes could not be higher. Climate scientists expect global heating to blast past 1.5 degrees centigrade. That 1.5 degrees figure, which you might hear talk about, was a stretch target set by the UN Climate Summit in Paris in 2015. Scientists are collectively saying that we need to keep the average increase in temperature to 1.5 degrees to avoid the worst consequences of climate change. Currently, we're on track for about 2.7. A world that is hotter than this is uncharted territory, but it's likely to lead to wars over resources and mass displacement of people. I don't know all of the other issues that you're looking at in this series on the news, but climate change will lead to more migration, wars over resources, food shortages. So another headline this week was that UK farmers consider quitting after extreme wet weather and low profits. Climate change is indirectly impacting nature too, as well as the other ways in which we're affecting the environment, having an impact on nature. Many of the species which call the UK home have seen their populations decline by an average of 41% in the last 50 years, and that's leading to 1 in 6 species being at risk of extinction. They're hard headlines to hear, I realise that. But we are increasingly reaching the limits beyond which life on Earth can be sustained for ourselves and millions of other species for whom this planet is home, and there are implications for future generations. It's clear that things are out of sync and that we're not living in harmony with each other, let alone the rest of creation. So is it any surprise that many of us, especially younger people, are experiencing a sense of climate anxiety, even hopelessness? Yet I would not and could not stand here today if I didn't also experience hope. All of the prophecies of the Old Testament find their resolution in the New Testament, and it's no less true for us in the context of today's headlines and in our day-to-day experiences. So let's look briefly at the Romans 8 passage that was read to us. Our present sufferings. It is our human experience that we suffer today, some of us more than others. It's about being in the now and the not yet. Suffering is also the experience of the rest of creation. The whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth, as it longs for redemption. Our news headlines reflect this groaning. But the whole of creation is in a time of transition. We are in a time of transition. We see it in leaves falling from the trees. Creation is good, but it also points to a time of renewal from the present to the future, in the hope that it will be liberated from its bondage to decay, waiting for the children of God to be revealed. That's us. There's more than a nod to the Garden of Eden. Tom Wright, a theologian and author, in his book Surprised by Hope, writes that one day the earth will be redeemed, not by scrapping what we've got and starting again, but being liberated from its bondage to decay because of what the Creator God has done in Jesus Christ, and supremely in his resurrection, is what he intends to do for the whole world, and by world meaning the whole universe. Colossians 1:15 says, Jesus, firstborn of all creation, holds all things together and reconciles all things to himself, making peace through the blood of his cross, through him. The good news of the gospel is for the whole of creation, not just us as humans. Creation needs redemption and renewal, and that's promised and guaranteed. With Easter, God's new creation is launched upon a surprised world, pointing ahead to the rebirth of the entire creation. Well, it's one thing to look to the future, but how do we live in the present with climate change and the loss of nature happening all around us? Well, what happens in the meantime, in the immediate, depends partly on what we do. Richard Borkham, another theologian who spent years studying ecology in the context of his faith, writes of responding to our ecological crisis in faith, hope, and love. And the good news is that love, as we've sung this morning, at the heart of our Christian faith, is a strong motivator. Matthew 22 reveals the Lord's greatest command: love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all of your soul and with all of your mind. And the second is like it: love your neighbour as yourself. How do we love God and others? God loves us. As we return God's love, we learn to love what he loves, which encompasses other people and the rest of creation. To my mind, we take an interest in those we love, and we want to learn more about what they love, their passions and interests, even if it might be something that doesn't interest us to the same extent. My husband is a football aficionado, lover, Liverpool supporter. He has transferred that love to my son. And between them, they spend a lot of time, my son playing football, my husband watching football, supporting him. My son does love nature too, so there's a little bit of influence there. I don't love football, I've got to be honest. I come from Wales. I'm more attracted to rugby than football, but I am trying to learn to appreciate it because it's something that's become so important to them. As for loving our neighbours, we know they're those in our local community, those in other countries around the world, but also the other than human world, the rest of creation that we share this planet with, our common home. All of our neighbours stand to suffer from the effects of climate change and nature loss, but it is the poorest who will suffer the most, as well as the youngest growing up in a world amid climatic and biological breakdown. So this is a justice issue as well. However, as we plant seeds, restore land, choose to live more simply, and campaign for justice for those most affected by climate change, Tom Wright again, he explains that these very earthly events that take place within a long history of things that implement Jesus' resurrection and anticipate the final new creation, they act as signposts of hope, pointing back to Jesus' resurrection and on to the second, to that new creation. We have hope for those and that which we love. I have hopes for my son and hopes that the decline of nature, especially puffins, one of my favourite birds, will be reversed. However, I know that I need to have realistic hope. It's highly unlikely that my son will become a professional footballer. But even so, there are benefits to him in having the discipline of football, training, enjoying being part of a team. So I hope that he will continue to enjoy that for as long as he can. The damage caused by climate change is well underway, and we are losing species, but we can still act to limit the damage to the natural world, to the rest of the earth. Returning to the climate scientists interviewed recently, many said the climate fight must continue, however high global temperatures rise, because every fraction of a degree would reduce human and other species suffering. Christina Figueres, who was the UN climate chief who oversaw the Paris 2015 talks, says this: "These climate scientists are doing their job. They are telling us where we are, but now it's up to the rest of us to decide what moment this requires of us and to turn the seemingly impossible into the new normal." So how can we respond? We can seek to bring about God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven through our worship. Pray for the environment regularly and for bold and courageous leadership across all sectors of society. It's going to take all of us. Find joy in nature every day if you can. You won't find a puffin in London, but there are loads of things on our doorstep that I'm sure we all delight in. So worship. Secondly, commitment. Sign up to Eco Church as a church community. I maybe can come back another time and tell you about it, but join thousands of churches. There are 7,000 churches across the UK registered for this award scheme. It's not just about the awards, it's a way of caring for the earth through every aspect of our church life. Take action in our own lives through our wild Christian community. And campaign together, for example, through supporting the Climate and Nature Bill, which commits the UK to doing its bit to try and keep global heating down or as close to 1.5 degrees, and to reversing the destruction of nature by 2030. So worship, commitment, speaking up. We have an election coming up soon. It's certainly not up to me to tell you how to vote, but please do vote. Strong leadership is needed to ensure the next UK government meets its domestic and international obligations. And finally, join us in our work at A Rocha UK. I've left some leaflets at the back and some magazines. You can sign up to receive some of our comms, a monthly newsletter, or to join our wild Christian community. Or go and visit Wolffields, probably about 20 minutes away from here. Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. May it be so. Thank you.
God of creation, there at the start, before the beginning of time. With no point of reference, you spoke to the dark and fleshed out the wonder of light. And as you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. In the vapor of your breath, the planets form. If the stars were made to worship, so will I can see your heart in everything you made. Every burning star, a signify of grace. If creation sings your praises, so will I. God of your promise, you don't speak in vain, no syllable empty or void. For once you have spoken, all nature and science follow the sound of your voice. And as you speak, 100 billion creatures catch your breath, evolving in pursuit of what you said. If it all reveals your nature, so will I. I can see your heart in everything you say. Every painted sky, a canvas of your grace. If creation still obeys you, so will I. If the stars were made to worship, so will I. If the mountains bow in reverence, so will I. If the oceans roar your greatness, so will I. For if everything exists to lift you high, so will I. If the wind goes where you send it, so will I. If the rocks cry out in silence, so will I. If the sum of all our praises still falls shy, then we'll sing again 100 billion times. God of salvation, you chase down my heart through all of my failure and pride. On a hill you create